All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are well today. My name is Joshua Cheney. I am not Brian Balmages, even though I think highly of him. I think he's a cool fellow. My name is Dr. Joshua Cheney. I am the Director of Choral Activities at Gardner-Webb University in Boiling Springs, North Carolina. And this is my session on the process of programming a path to inspirational, affordable, and achievable concerts. And I appreciate y'all for joining on Zoom tonight, or not Zoom, I guess we're on Webinar Jam, to take a listen. Let me apologize to y'all. I found out today after updating my Macintosh to the new OS that it does not like my webcam. So you guys are getting the sepia tone shot from the inbox camera on my computer. So I apologize. I look a little fuzzy, but why don't we go ahead, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, you should be able to see my slide presentation there. If for some reason y'all can't, just let me know in the chat. So the process of programming a path to inspirational, affordable, and achievable concerts. So I think real quick, y'all, we've always got to start with why. Why though, baby, is one of my favorite memes. Hope you enjoy it. I think it's important to program a variety of repertoire in order to do or maintain many integral aspects of a choral music program, or really any music education program for that matter, versus repeating the same material too often. So in an educational setting, I think that varied repertoire helps in the intellectual, emotional, spiritual, and artistic development of students, teachers, and audiences. And that's really who is experiencing our repertoire all fold, if you will. The students experience it, teachers experience it, ourselves, and then the audience, which includes, myriad different individuals. We're looking in an educational setting for growth in musicianship and musical ability. Varied repertoire helps to bring that about. We're looking in an educational setting for the development of an intrinsic understanding of people different than ourselves. And obviously, we all know that music is one of the greatest vehicles for helping to do such a thing. Cultural expression, cultural exploration, cultural engagement. Speaking of expression, in an educational setting, I think it's important that we teach our students how to express themselves. I'm not so sure that I learned to express myself in math. I'm sure someone has somewhere. But for me, it was playing in band and singing in choir that I learned how to express myself in a healthy way. And we want to teach our students how to do that. If they're singing the same songs over and over and over again, we might not achieve that as easily. And finally, one of the biggest reasons for varying repertoire is to help build community. When people are mentally and emotionally engaged in what's going on in the room, it helps to do that kind of thing, I think. So real quick, before we kind of talk more practically, I have a kind of a manifesto at the end of this why idea, which is this. Music is an expression of who we are, who we were, and who we might be. It is also one of the most powerful tools that we have to build upon our hope to understand others. Because who we are changes, we need different and varied musics in our lives, and I think literally need. And in order for our world to be made better, we must never stop learning about others and how we might relate to them. Because there will always be someone or something new. There's always going to be somebody or something new for us to learn about. We need different and varied musics in our lives. So there's my why stump speech. So as you're beginning your search for inspiration, I think it's important that you ask yourself or consider these things. Why do they make music? And in the education space, the they is students. Why do our students make music? I think our students make music for a couple different reasons. And if there's something that you want to share, feel free to drop it in the chat. I think students make music to express themselves emotionally, say what they otherwise might not say. Seeking inspiration in that space is where we might find what we should sing, how we can help our students express themselves emotionally, to build community, to build relationships with the people around them. How might we choose songs that help our students do that? I think spiritual engagement is an important thing for people to do in a music classroom, even in a public school. Obviously, we should not and cannot dictate to our students what their spirituality should be. But I believe that it's important to engage with that and help them to learn about themselves and others in those spaces. So spiritual engagement, to understand themselves beyond the physical, the mental, and the emotional. And last but not least, this is definitely a last but not least, and I think it's important that we allow for this inside of our educational experience in music, is for people to have fun. There is nothing wrong with having fun, and choosing music that is fun is valuable and is important for our students, and I think they desire that. And so seeking out what is going to be fun for them to sing, what's going to be fun for them to play. A second question in your search for inspiration to ask is, why do you make music? Why do I, Joshua, why do I make music? For me, it's all of the reasons that I already listed: emotional expression, building community, spiritual engagement, having a good time. This might tie into having a good time, but y'all, I make music because I like it. I like to do it. It gives me joy. It gives me strength. It helps me process my emotions. It helps me learn about myself. It helps me learn about other people. I want to sing songs that let me do those things. I want to conduct music that helps me to do those things. Seeking inspiration in that place is something that I do. And finally, when asking myself the question, why do I make music? And I would encourage you to do this as well. Y'all, I make music because I have to. It's how I relate to the world. And if music is how you relate to the world, then seeking inspiration in that relationship and how you relate is a place where you might find what you should play, what you should say. Finally, in this first step of search for inspiration, what does the world need to hear? What does our world need to listen to? I think the world needs to hear stories. I think the world needs to hear our students' story. I think the world needs to hear other people's story. I think sometimes the world needs to hear my story. And stories are experiences. And so I think more often than not, this means the experiences of others or the experiences of our students. And so that we can learn about others through music engagement, and our students can learn about themselves through music engagement. What are their stories? What do they need to say that they can say with singing, with playing? I think it's very easy to dismiss the idea, especially in an educational setting, of what is my story? What do I need to say? But I believe that music teachers are in the classroom for a reason, and our students can learn more from us than just how to get eighth notes right and how to place vowels and how to push the right fingers on the right instrument. I think that we have a lot to share of ourselves with our students, and why would we not do that with our music? Why would we not do that with our music? I think that's a big thing. And so when you begin to search for music, folk, y'all, I think you need to ask, why do your students make music? Why do you make music? And what does the world around us need to hear? Because so much of the world now carries endless entertainment in our pockets. I mean, look, it freaks me out to have this further than 10 feet away. I got it sitting right here on the table. It is imperative that our message from the stage be creative and relevant, or nobody's going to bother to listen because they can look at this thing instead. So in all of that, consider the following. Thematic programming. I know that you have all heard that before. I know you've heard thematic programming before, but I think it's a great way to begin to engage with this idea of storytelling, my story, student story, other people's stories. What does the world need to hear? In a choral setting, and I'm a choir director, so most of this is going to come from that perspective. Following the initial inspiration, the germinating place for thematic programming is and always will be your text. Words are the one thing that vocal choral music has that all other forms of music don't have. Everything else is there with the exception of text. And so I think we got to engage with that. We've got to engage with that and take advantage of that, especially in a choral setting. With intentional and creative thinking, one can find relationships between texts and ideas that might be missed if otherwise unconsidered or overlooked. And I think that's where our creativity comes into play. How can I tie an idea or an inspiration in my life or in my students' lives? How can I find music that ties into that without sitting down and writing a song specifically about it? Not that there's anything wrong with doing that, but being creative about how you tie different ideas together textually, I think, is important. So in regard to thematic programming, I think that particular way of programming is highly effective when the theme follows a linear progression. Now, before we jump into an example of a program that has a theme and has a linear progression, let me say this. Never allow any theme, never allow any programming idea to dictate your ensemble's mission, right? Your mission, be it education, ministry, or otherwise, must come first. Fit any theme and any subsequently chosen repertoire into the auspices of that mission. Music educators are meant to use music to educate, and so any theme, any repertoire chosen has got to fit into that idea first, rather than using education and your ensemble at school to tell your artistic story. You tell the story for the purpose of education, not the other way around. So, all right, I won't beat that dead horse too much. All right, here's a program called Ad Lunam that fits the theme and also tells a linear story. This is actually my first semester here at Gardner-Webb. Prior to that, I was the assistant professor of choral music at Lee University over in Cleveland, Tennessee, and I directed the men's chorale there. So Lee, if you know anything about Lee, you know that Lee is a private faith-based institution, big music program. So we had a men's choir there. And if you know anything about 2019, you'll remember that it was the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. So what I did was I dredged up a bunch of soliloquies, literally the story of the moon landing. And I called my friend Dan Buck, who is a theater professor at Lee, and asked him to read those soliloquies. And you can see the, kind of the snapshot of what each of those soliloquies was about over there on the left side of the page. And on the right side of the page is every example of the piece of music that we, as a choir, sung in response to those soliloquies. So we followed the story from John F. Kennedy's original speech in 1960, well before the Apollo 11 mission, where he talked about it was important for us as a nation to go to the moon, and is big and inspirational, and it follows all the way through the development of the program, the command module called LMEA, the actual launch, the flight to the moon. Buzz Aldrin, who was a Roman Catholic, actually took sacrament on the moon. Panem de Cello is bread of heaven, and Lee University being a faith-based institution, that played right into my audience there. And anyway, we told the story of them going to the moon with this music. And so it functioned a whole lot. If you're familiar with the lessons and carols story or programs that often happen during Advent, Christmas season, where different scriptures are read and then they are commented upon with music, we literally did the same thing. And so you see here, this is a program told linearly and with a thematic idea. I tried to be diverse in my repertoire choices. You'll see over there on the side, got some music from all different time periods, different languages, different kinds of composers there on the other side of the page. So anyway, this is my point of how to write a program that is going to be interesting to your audience, interesting to yourself, is going to connect in some sort of way with your students meaningfully. We tied in the faith of the institution with this program, and just brought in all of these ideas to create something meaningful for the group. And I'd like to think that it was pretty successful. So, I got skipped. Oh no, guys, I'm so sorry. This must be an old edition of my program. Anyway, so there's a slide before this, and it says this. It says, choose music that meets why. And those whys are the whys from this slide. We need to choose music that meets these why. Your students' why, your audience's why, and your why, all under the auspices of your mission. So, with that said, let's go back to this slide here. Folks, you got to program concerts that are going to mean something, and I can't tell you what that is. You have to know for yourself what that is. You got to know your community, know your students, know your audience, know your program, because that's what it is. And most importantly, know yourself, because that's how it is that you're going to be able to program music and program events that mean something to all of the people involved. So, let me check my... nope, this is not, Gene, this is not pre-recorded. You may ask a question anytime that you please. So, and whenever you're ready, just you can type that into there. So let's go ahead and go on. Okay, so you've had your inspiration, whatever it is that's inspired you to try to write a program about something. So you got to ask yourself some secondary level questions. I think the most important of all of these, y'all, you've got to know yourself and you need to know your ensemble. And this is what I mean. First and foremost, you must program music of which your ensemble is capable. This means you must know their voices, you must know their abilities, and you must know their true selves, who they are. So your ensemble needs to be physically capable. If you direct a 6th grade middle school treble ensemble with tons of unchanged voices, it is probably unwise for you to program Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. They are not going to be able to sing that. And obviously that is a ridiculous example, but I hope that you know what I mean. If your ensemble isn't physically capable of reproducing the sounds in a healthy fashion, then that doesn't belong in your program. Second to that, your ensemble must be musically capable. And this is basically the question of, is the music too hard? Is it too hard for the group singing? Oh, I see. Oh, Retta, it doesn't look like you have it. It looks like you marked question. But Retta, if you have a question, feel free to ask. I see that you're from Mandeville. Hello. So, I should say, not that it's too big of a deal. I got hooked up with LMEA because I am a proud graduate of Louisiana State University. So, anyway. All right, so your ensemble, y'all, they've got to be musically capable of what it is that you've asked of them. Don't program music too hard for your group. Just don't do it. We've all done it before. I have done it so many times, and I'm sure I'll do it again. But don't program music that is too difficult for your ensemble. And then finally, here's something that I don't think that we think about too much, but we should more often. We got to know our ensemble's true selves. You got to know your students' true selves. And I think it's unwise to program music of which they are emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually incapable of producing properly. If you're a choir director, you are likely familiar with the composer Eric Session-Waltz. He's a Latvian man and has been huge in the choral past 5 years. So Session-Waltz has a piece called "The Long Road." The Long Road is an English translation of a Latvian poem by a woman who lost her husband. And she lost her husband after their life together. He died of, we actually don't know from the music, but you could assume that he dies of natural causes. And her poem is about the great sadness that she experiences from no longer being with him while simultaneously experiencing the joy of having lived their life together. I don't know what that feels like. And I know that high school students do not either. I'm not so sure that a text that emotionally deep is something that is appropriate for high school students to sing, even if they can make the sounds. Do you know what I'm saying? And so if text is the guiding path by which we are looking at this kind of thing, you've got to program music with text that your students can recreate naturally and believably. It's something that they can actually tie their soul to. And I think that that's important. So program music of which the choir is capable, and the know thyself is simple, y'all. You got to be able to conduct it, and you've got to be able to lead the rehearsals on it and be technically capable of getting your ensemble to what it is that they're doing. So make sure that you are up to snuff on the music at hand. All right, let's talk about intentional variety. So I think variety is another word for diversity. It applies in 2 ways, y'all. Variety applies philosophically. I think it's our job in the school to represent as many cultures, time periods, languages, points of view, and people as you possibly can. I know that is not the first time that you've heard that, and I know that we all know that's important, but I think it's worth reiterating. Here's an idea that I hope it's not controversial. Maybe it might be, depending on how you think about things. But remember that modern voices and historical greats all have something in common. All of them are people. All of them are people, living or dead, and all are equally relevant in this way. We should not sacrifice either for the sake of the other. Mozart, Bach, and Beethoven were just as real human beings as Jake Runestad and Andrea Ramsey and Caroline Shaw. All of those individuals were human beings. Some of them are alive, and some of them are dead. And we should honor the great work that was done in the past, and we should honor the great work that is being done now. That diversity of time period of greats from the past, as well as modern voices and important trends that are going on during our time, we got to do both of those things. So make sure that you are covering those bases. I think intentional variety also applies in a practical setting. And this is about helping your students grow, helping yourself grow, so that your audience get bored. Represent as many key centers, tempos, timbres, textures, and styles as you possibly can. Be diverse in the kind of music that you pick. It is so easy to want to pick 12 Lauritsen pieces in a row that are all ushy-gushy and just feel amazing. And then you turn around and there's 5 parents clapping because the other 55 of them are asleep. And so our goal is to be diverse in key center, tempo, timbre, texture, and style on top of all that philosophical stuff. That said, I do think it's okay to sacrifice some of this to stick with your theme. Let's say you want to do a Schubert Mass in G with your group. Obviously all of Schubert's Mass in G is all by Schubert, and it's all romantic, and that's what it is. But program it. That's not going to hurt anybody. But unless you're doing something special, I would say be diverse in your choices. Get outside the box, y'all. Include music from all walks of life. It's so easy to stay inside of our own bubble, whether it be like hardcore, high art, choral stuff, or maybe you're into Broadway, or maybe you're into pop or a cappella style, or whatever it is that you're into. All those things are good, but include stuff from all walks of life. Find ways to incorporate music that is non-traditional for the format. Solos. Have solos at your concert if you don't. Let your collaborative artist, if you have one, let them play a piano solo that ties in with the theme or with the music. Use other instruments. I'm betting that y'all, if your choir directors, have students who play instruments in your choir. I'm betting that if y'all are band directors, that you have singers in your band. Pick music from non-traditional sources as well, like video games. Y'all, I've chosen music from video games to stick into concerts, whether it was just a short interludes from an instrument or even something sung. And y'all students now, my generation on down, are going to lose their mind to sing music from video games. It blows people's minds. So I think also getting in the box, engaging with poetry and reading and quotes and sting other little things inside of your program to be as artistically diverse as you can. There's so many ways to tie poetry in with music, and I wanted to get outside of the box in that. It's one thing to have a Sarah Teasdale quote, but it's another thing to pull a quote from Dave Grohl, who is the lead singer of the Foo Fighters. And so that speaks to our audiences, and I think that we should do that kind of thing. So lastly, and I know you know this, but again, doesn't hurt to reiterate, y'all listen everywhere. Conferences, Spotify, other schools, go to their concerts, other churches, go to their services, other media, movies, video games, radio, commercials. There's great music everywhere. I'm sure most of y'all, if you're choir directors, have at least heard, if not programmed 75 times, the Etna Menvueli from the beginning of the Disney movie Frozen. I was not interested at all in watching that movie. And then my wife made me watch it. And as soon as that first sound kicked in, I was sold because of how much that tied into my whole world. And so we don't always have to be finding from our favorite publishers. There's lots of choral music out there. Y'all go find it. So let's look at another program that I've written that I would like to think represents the things that I'm talking about. This program is called A Dream of Spring. My choir, the Choral Union at Lee University, gave this program in spring 2019. If you'd like to take a look, that link down there at the bottom of the page can show it to you. This program was used the passing of the winter into spring as a metaphor for emergence from a depressive state. If you're looking at this, I'm sure that you can see George R.R. Martin, Margaret Atwood, and Lucy Maud Montgomery, who are all fairly famous authors. George probably the most famous lately, but Margaret Atwood wrote The Handmaid's Tale, and Lucy Maud Montgomery wrote Anne of Green Gables. So tied in some quotes here. And you'll see 3 piano selections: Sacred Grove, Chic's Theme, and Fishing Hole. Excuse me for just a second. Sacred Grove, Chic's Theme, and Fishing Hole were all simple piano arrangements of music from a video game called The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. The Legend of Zelda franchise is a huge video game franchise, means a lot to me. Growing up as a millennial, played all of the Zelda games, and all of my students at Lee really bought into that as a part of our program. And you'll see that I tried to diversify language here as much as I could. And Lee, being a faith-based institution, I wanted to give my students the opportunity to sing an almost entirely secular program. The only sacred piece on this is that last Jubilate Deo there at the end. But I tried to achieve some of these ideas on intentional variety with this program. So you can see romantic music on here, see some 20th century, see some 21st century, European composers, American composers, Asian composers, and then also using the piano as an alternate for kind of a back and forth with the choir. So anyway, okay, so you have thought about your inspiration, you've programmed, and you've chosen all of your music. And so now the realities of your existence are coming for you, right? So if there is a choir director in the world who has enough money, please introduce me to that person because I need to borrow some. So if your budget or lack thereof, that's always going to be a part of our lives, right? So here's 3 places that you probably already know of, but you should definitely just remember as a pleasure how you can manage the practicality of having to deal with budget. I'll use your library. It's so easy to ignore it and to just find the coolest new thing that we hunt down on the internet, especially nowadays. Even though I love this, like I love Graphite and JW Pepper and all the other organizations that you can immediately print stuff from their digital downloads or load it into an iPad if you use one of those. But don't forget your library. It's there. Use it. And if you build it little by little, it will grow, right? It's going to grow and you'll have it again in the future. Free stuff, y'all. Stop buying music that's on the internet for free. Sometimes new editions of non-copyright works are nice to have and they are worth the money, but many times I am not so sure. Check CPDL and IMSLP. Those are great websites for finding public domain music. That said, while these are useful sites, you need to check what you find there. I have a friend who teaches at Queens College in New York, and he equated Choral Public Domain Library to Wikipedia, right? You need to make sure that what you find there can be trusted. And so I think that's on us, right? But if you take that extra step of checking what it is that you find on public domain sites, you can save yourself a lot of money by investing just a little bit more time. And then finally, your friends, y'all, borrow as much as you can, be a willing reciprocant. When you need a piece but don't have it, ask around. I have a friend who works in Texas who texted me yesterday asking if he could borrow the brass parts to the David Wilcox carols. And unfortunately, I don't have them. So I directed him to my teacher at LSU, and hopefully they do have them there. Folks tend to let you borrow. I have found that our choral community is quite friendly. And I believe the band and orchestra communities to be that way as well. Share. The biggest thing is take care of other people's music, and then when it's your turn, share back, right? So here's another program that I think shows some of this. This was we gave this content to Gardner Webb just the other day. We have been so blessed. Gardner Webb is a very, very rural, we're in a rural place, and so we have been able to be on campus and have some large spaces where we can sing safely. And so we gave this concert the other day. Had about 30 people in the room maybe. And so you'll see over there on the right that I only had to purchase 2 pieces because I used a couple public domain, a lot of music from the library, used a manuscript of a piece that my brother wrote. He's a composer. And my collaborative artist is a fantastic organist, and he used a piece from his personal library. So we, put together a program that was about 40 minutes long and only had to spend about $50 to put it together. And so by digging around and finding something that will work, you can create, you can wiggle around that budget problem that we all have most of the time. So some of the other practicalities that I think we got to look out for. Let's talk about those. So here's a big one, y'all. Legality. It's complicated. The legalities of recording, live streaming, and especially arranging music for your choirs is complicated. Don't just assume that because you're doing it for a school that it is legal, okay? Don't just assume that, because I've done that kind of thing before and have been wrong. And probably the worst part about it, most of the time when we do that, we don't get caught. We don't get caught. But our friends in the publishing industry, our friends who are composers, and our friends who are in the music distribution industry, those people are the ones that suffer the consequences for us not following the rules according to legality, and especially during this COVID time when all of those folks' business has, if not shut down entirely, they've taken a huge hit. Let's make sure that we are doing things properly and legally, so that our friends who are composers, publishers, and retailers, that they're getting their fair share. So check out that website. That is the NAFME page on all the things that you need to know about the law in the United States of America, about legality of arranging and all of that kind of thing. All right, some of the other practicalities. Think about the room that you're in. Are the pieces that you're choosing, are they going to sound good in that room? Sometimes you want to plant your flag and die for a piece if your students are going to learn something from it. Sometimes you just really like it. And so remember the auspices of your mission. What is the auspices of your mission? And so follow that, but consider the room. Engage with movement, especially if you're a choir. Have them move around, stand around the audience, stand up to the audience, stand behind the audience, stand above the audience. What does your performance space or performance spaces? Maybe you're lucky you got more than one. What kind of thing can you affect by moving people around, by having people change space? How does that affect the artistic presentation of your program? Engage with spatial aesthetic. This is something that I sometimes have a hard time thinking about, but I think it's important. Choral music is primarily an oral art, but it is secondarily, y'all, it's a visual art. And so consider how movement and singer placement might further engage your audience with the message of your concert. And finally, engage with the artistic tools at hand. How could you experiment with lighting to enhance the message of a program? What about live sound? Could you use live sound to do something interesting, to do something creative? What about temperature? You got really outside of the box and did something with the temperature in the space that you are working in. With concert attire, like we're so sold on black from neck to toe. And while I think that looks good and it definitely works, there's nothing wrong with it. Could you change your concert attire to help tell the story that you're trying to tell? I'll get a little bit serious here to tell a very particular story, and so forgive the sadness for a second, but I think it illustrates a great point. Back in the fall of 2016, I was in my DMA program at LSU in Baton Rouge, and the fall 2016 semester was immediately following the police shooting of Alton Sterling and the subsequent shooting from the fellow from Missouri. And if any of y'all are from Baton Rouge or I'm sure that you remember that was just devastating for the city. It was devastating for months. It was a weight on everybody who lived in Baton Rouge. And I can't speak for the rest of Louisiana, but I'm sure that there are others who felt as well. So at LSU and Acapella Choir, we felt the need to, our director, John Dixon, felt the need to find some way to approach that, to do what we could to share, just to share some love and to try to process some grief as a community. So we made the choice to present our fall concert, which was all about just a lot of grief processing and trying to understand diverse people who are different from oneself and create some diversity in the experience. And we gave a concert without shoes. And while we were singing all this music from various spiritual traditions and poetry and lighting and movement and all of this stuff, singing a concert without shoes on felt ridiculous. Even in the moment, it felt ridiculous. But I can't tell you how many people came up to me and other singers after the concert and spoke about how that act created a sense of intimacy that otherwise would not have been there. So anyway, my whole point is, what tiny things could you change in order to create something special for your audience, for yourself, for your students? And again, not in that order, but you know what I mean. So, okay, let's move on. More management of practicalities. Let's talk about performance practice versus education experience. Sometimes I think you should break performance practice rules. I think performance practice is a great thing. I think it's important, but again, auspices of the mission. Lots of important and powerful music was not written with today's 612 USA choral music experience in mind. The performance practice movement is a great thing, and you should attend to performance practice as much as possible. However, I do not believe that it should dictate how we use music for education. For example, William Byrd, he wrote Mass for 4 voices back in 15-something, 16-something, and it's for just that, 4 voices. That said, it's still good for a 120-voice festival chorus to sing William Byrd's Mass for 4 voices because it's important music in Western music history. So I'm going to sing Mass for 4 voices with 120 people because my job is to teach them about William Byrd, not to adhere to performance practice 10 out of 10 times. Another example, much English cathedral music from the early 20th century was written for treble boys, not women. It's still good for women to sing it because it's great music. And so we do. Why would you not, right? You know, and it's not like Ray Vaughan Williams is going to get offended. At least I don't think. So that said, sometimes you shouldn't break performance practice. Composers are real people, real artistic and desires. If composers are very specific about a certain thing, you know, let them have that. Let them have that. They should, you know, we should honor their work and their humanity in those things. I think this comes most especially in avoiding cheesy arrangements of folk music from minority cultures that tend to appropriate language or style into an Americanized version. We see this all over our, and all over the place we see this. Even in the hymn books we see this. Honor people of those various cultures by doing the work to find something real. I think that's important. That said, with all of those, sometimes you should, sometimes you shouldn't, let's remember this. It is our job to seek out new choral experiences from a diversity of ways of thinking and ways of life. In a choral director's life filled with this perpetual search, the likelihood is that you're going to make at least one mistake, and you are going to do it wrong at least one time. So forgive this of yourself, and most importantly, y'all, we've got to forgive this of others. Our community can be just as divided as the rest of our nation is right now. And I think it would be better if we were more often willing to forgive each other for making performance practice mistakes. And we can better our musical community by offering each other that grace. Let's do that. Let's offer it to ourselves and to each other. So, all right, length. Y'all, 45 to 60 minutes. 45 to 60 minutes. There's just no reason for it to be longer than that. There are very few truly passive experiences in our society anymore, and I think going to a quote unquote classical, as opposed to like a rock show or a hip hop show or a country show, coming to one of our concerts tends to be a passive experience for the listener. And again, everybody has this thing right here in their pocket, and so creating something that is going to get them in, get them out, and hit them while they're in that sweet spot. That's our job, right? Asking more of people than 60 minutes, I think most often will likely result in boredom or a loss of an audience, and we don't want that. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I think this also goes into, I think it's better to play or sing fewer pieces excellently than it is to play more pieces mediocrely. You want to prepare your students to be excellent, right? I think it's a little bit, sometimes my mother will talk to me about how she dressed me when I was an infant, right? And she felt that it was her job to make sure that I didn't look ridiculous as an infant, because infants cannot dress themselves. You have to dress your child, right? And so your ensembles only get to sing or play what it is that you program for them. And so you need to program stuff that's going to make them look good. Choose music and a time frame of music that will let them be excellent instead of being mediocre. Sometimes with length, y'all, I think we can break that rule if it's a holiday concert, or if you've got a special, you're doing a special piece of music like a Rudder Requiem or something that goes outside of that time frame, but it's all one thing. Make acquiescence for that. But if you're just doing regular quote unquote program, 45 to 60 minutes. That's my recommendation to you. For my choral people, language. It's imperative that your students experience a diversity of language. It is not imperative that they experience only non-native language. It is not imperative that they experience non-native language all the time or all on the same program or anything like that. You need to get that, but that's not all they need to get. You can diversify that as well. Also, this is just a thought, but remember this. For some of our students, English is the non-native language, and another language is the native language. Remember that. Woo, sorry, excuse me, I pulled my headphone out. Okay, so sacred, secular, choral music, and if this is controversial, I'm sorry. This is just what I think. Choral music is inseparable from sacred, and choral music is inseparable from secular. Do both. Just do both. In non-sectarian educational institutions, which I imagine most of y'all are in, make sure that you are diverse in your sacred choices. Emphasizing one or avoiding one or others that's just not cool. Don't do that. In sectarian educational institutions like mine, make sure you're diverse in your secular choices. Don't just program music that fits inside of one bubble. Be diverse. And then finally, here's an important point. Remember, what are you going to plant your flag and die for? Don't get fired for a song. It's your job to educate. It is not your job to champion a particular piece of music. So recognize the value that you have and don't sacrifice it for one song. Okay. All right, let's talk about some good ideas I think you can use. I'll push on. There we go. Okay, y'all. When things inspire you, have a place where you keep those ideas. I use Google Drive on my phone. Here it is, right here. I have a list of places that I keep, that kind of thing. And just that way you can remember it later when you're looking at music. Engage your students, obviously. Ask them what they want to sing about. Ask them what they care about. What is interesting to them? What are they thinking about? What are they feeling? Engage with them on those things, and they can help you to program. Your students are creatives, and let them be creative, right? Hey, you're creative too, by the way. Don't forget that. Let you be creative. Let you be creative. Work in advance. Work in advance. As far out as you can program, do that. Definitely do that. Obviously, what you can program is hugely determined by who's in the group at the time, right? And so once you have a really good idea of what the ensemble is going to be, that's the time to start, right? That's the time to start. Finally, use a programming module. I love this. Check this out. This is something I learned at LSU. So this is a programming module. You'll see it's just an Excel file. And up there at the top, title, composer, length, key, if it's got a solo or not, if there's instrumentation, tempo, language, where you get it from, or over there on the side. And so, this helps you to linearly outline your story, if you will, over there on the left. And then, you want to know whose music you're using. How long is your program going to end up being? All of the different keys and key relationships that you're going through. And then some of those practical things like solo and instrumentation of having to literally move people around. Like take, for example, if you see this program here, about halfway down, you'll see the Elegische Gesang, which was a Beethoven piece. We did that last spring, right before COVID happened. We did this program at Lee, and 2020 is the Beethoven year. And so we did Elegische Gesang string quartet, immediately followed by that Eschenwalds Long Road that I was talking about earlier. And so the one has a string quartet, and then the second thing has all these recorders and little Eschenwalds percussion that he likes to put, bell percussion that he likes. And so, in that moment, there was a stagehand change where we had to get the string quartet chairs up and out of the way. And then, those recorders had to be in the back pocket of all of the people who were going to play them. And so, this helps you to see where those practical changes are going to happen, your diversity of language, and a big one, y'all, is tempo. I imagine you can see this program was called How Now Shall We Live, and it was a pretty heavy program, so we were willing to acquiesce in having a lot of slower music. But this module helps us to see all of those different kinds of things. And then down there at the bottom, you got your maybes. What other stuff might could fit into this? We looked at some different versions of some of the same texts. And then even down there at the bottom were some of the ideas for how we could make this program more thematically interesting by changing some of those things other than just music. And so this is a programming module. And y'all, that is out for you. Further reading if you would like to see. And this is loaded into Webinar Jam, but if anybody would like to have access to all of these slides, there is my contact information, and you are more than willing to email me, to phone call me, to reach out to me via Instagram, or you can even snail mail me with that address right there if you wanted to. And so I am more than happy to hang out if anybody has any questions or wants to chat about anything. Hey, you're so welcome. I have been so glad to be here. Thank you, LMEA support team. You are awesome. So, okay, well, guys, I think it is my job. Tell you what, let me turn off the slide presentation here. And again, if anybody wants this, feel free to email me. But if nobody has any questions, I think Miss Retta, you are so welcome. It was such a pleasure to speak with y'all. If nobody has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and hang up because I believe that it is my job to do that. Walt, it is my job to hang up. Is that right?
Either of us can, Josh. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much. Walt, thank you so much. You're the man. LMEA, you guys are the best. And go Tigers.
Thanks, everybody. All right.